Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello, Casey. Shakil, how are you doing?
I'm good. Hi, Tawhid
Uh,
bhai.
yes. So first thing first, we have to introduce our new partner in our discussion. I have to introduce Casey because you already know him, but someone who is getting into this discussion, joining through the YouTube or other social media, they might ask, who is Casey actually? Casey is my friend from the Bush School. We got introduced in the Bush School in 2018 maybe. We had a common semester there, and he went to study law and do law stuffs, and then he actually studied law in the University of Wisconsin, right? And
That
then
is
later,
correct, yes.
yeah, Wisconsin, and then he became a attorney to the attorney examination, and then he became a private attorney. Later on, he switched in a government attorney job, and later, right now, he's
That's
working
right.
as a government tax attorney. That's the real introduction, and we are doing the same thing that I do with you. We are doing so many discussion through internet, especially the WhatsApp, and we talk a lot. We talk a lot about so many heavy stuffs, and then I found it will be great if we can include him in our discussion, and we can be more resourceful. From especially, he is such an intelligent person. He has some raw and observable ideas and concept and contribution. He may have some proper contribution to our discussion from his own experience. That will be really insightful addition to our part. So that's the listing that I can talk about. Casey, do you wanna say something to Shakil or
You
me
know,
or to the
you
audience?
covered it. You covered it very well. Thank you for the introduction, and I appreciate you inviting me on to your conversations, and hopefully I can add a little color to your conversations.
Thank you so much. So, the first thing, I'm so happy. So previously, I used to have only one person to ask and make fun and make their life difficult. I have now 2%. So,
Do that.
welcome, Casey. So today we're going to talk two things. So first, people who follows us, we have been fascinated with this idea of machinocracy. So in the first part of this discussion today, we're going to talk about what is machinocracy and what is this new concept we're talking about. And in this age of AI, what is the impact that is this going to have in the coming months that is coming? So that is the first thing. And then we're going to go to our usual reading of books, where Casey will be part of our discussion, where we will ask questions from that book to Casey. So with that, first thing, the thing that we were talking about, let's talk about that first, gerrymandering.
Yeah,
So Casey
very
was
popular in
explaining
the
me.
news.
Yeah, so this has been going on. In California, they passed a Proposition 15, where now the governor Gavin Newsom will have the power to draw the map to support his political ideologies. So please, Casey, you are from United States. Please explain gerrymandering for us for a little bit.
So what is gerrymandering? At its core, it's just redrawing maps so that you get votes in your district and you can build the power for your political party, right? So generally there are two parties in the United States, Republicans, Democrats. California, Prop 50, they approved the government of California to begin redrawing their maps to favor the Democratic Party. And why are they doing this? Well, you had seen in the news recently that Texas, kind of on their own accord, right, decided that they're going to redraw the maps first. And the whole point is to try to gain more power in the United States Congress by having more people belonging to your party by just simply redrawing the maps. In terms of the actual process, like why did California have to put a ballot measure in order to do that? Well, each state has their own laws, right? They have their own constitutions, they have their own statutes, and so it depends on each state as to how they can effectuate a redrawing of the maps. So that's basically what it is, right? The party in power says, my voters are in this city. I want as many of those cities in my district as possible so that I know I'm going to win that district. So that's packing, right? I'm packing my voters into my district. There's another strategy called cracking. I know there's a group of voters in this city who votes for my opponent. I want to dilute their power, so I'm going to crack that city into 2 or 3 different districts to dilute the vote, right? So that's ultimately what they're doing, is drawing the maps around certain districts of populations who vote certain ways, so that ultimately they can have the power. It's very controversial, right? It's not very democratic. It's power politics. It's like playing a game, basically. Is it legal? That's another question. There was a case, the name escapes me right now, but it went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And there was an opportunity a few years ago for the United States Supreme Court to say, can't do that, it's not constitutional. But they decided that's a political question, right? Drawing maps, that's not something for courts to decide. So they didn't deal with it, and so now what we're seeing in modern politics is states engaging in that exact behavior. What I will say, and this is kind of unique, so in Wisconsin, for example, it's actually illegal, right? So we have our own court system in Wisconsin. We're co-equal to the federal Supreme Court. And in terms of the redistricting in Wisconsin, there was a case where our Supreme Court said you need to have fair maps. So again, it depends on each state, the courts, the laws, their constitutions as to whether this can be done. But what we're seeing right now, Texas, California, two of the biggest states, they're doing it, and they're doing it to play politics. Hopefully that's a good summary for you.
Yeah.
That's a really good summary for me. But this is the thing you already mentioned, that this, by sound of it, that I am trying to manipulate the democratic power of people by packing or cracking them. This is by definition is anti-democratic. And I do not know how, like the legal scholars of Supreme Court judges, those people, why didn't they take a strict measure on this, that no, you can't do gerrymandering. This is first thing. So if a government official can do that, like, cracking and doing this kind of thing, how about, let's say somebody does this gerrymandering, but they're not thinking about that these people might change their mind. Like, let's say I gerrymander, Texas is gerrymandering, and the government about saying, wouldn't the people of Texas see this? Hey, this guy is doing this just arbitrarily, so we will change our mind and vote the other way so that other person cannot come. So how does that work in your experience in the United States? How do people think it? Like it should be like, if, in my opinion, if Gavin Newsom does it, I will vote against him because I cannot vote. But if I had the power of vote, I would have voted against him because I do not think he's democratic. So what do you think? What's your opinion on that?
I mean, I think you're right? I mean, the solution to this is the people. Because this is a democracy, like cracking and packing, yes, it works because we can identify certain groups of voters. However, if this goes to the core of the democracy, if Greg Abbott or Governor Newsom engages in this sort of behavior, the people could decide that they don't want this type of government action, and they can still vote them out, right? People can change their votes and basically make the whole system of gerrymandering meaningless by saying, yeah, we don't like what you're doing, so we're going to vote you out, right? And we would rather vote somebody in to restore the maps and have more of a balanced redrawing of the maps. Will that happen? Probably not, right? I mean, I think our experience in America is that once a person identifies themselves as Republican, they will pretty much follow the party line. Same with liberals, right? I mean, we're a very divided country. We're in our camps. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But yes, you're right. Ultimately, the people's voice does matter here. Have we seen a case where somebody's got voted out for redistricting? I don't think so. I'm not aware of one. But yeah, I mean, that's a good observation.
Once in a history, President Roosevelt, after the Great Depression, tried to implement the Keynesian ideology with his government to fight back the Great Depression. So while he was taking some revolutionary steps to recover the economy, but the court came out as in a very different way. They ruled out so many executive decisions of that time by Franklin Roosevelt and the Keynes theory. So at the time, Franklin Roosevelt was thinking that I'm trying to do something for the people of my country, but that court actually being very heavy on us and our policies. So he was thinking to have a court packing, overnumbering or outnumbering the present court members who were actually against his decision. So he was trying to recruit new high court judges who can actually follow his political ideology. But that was a very beautiful thing that I don't know what is the present situation right at this moment in America. At the time, the people from the Roosevelt party, I don't know what's the party, Republican or Democrat, Democratic people of that time even didn't subscribe the idea of Franklin Roosevelt. So his decision of picking the court was null and void in the lower house. I mean the lower parliament
House of
of US.
Representatives.
House of Representative. Not even it went to the Senate. So that was
Yep.
the balance of the democratic structure of the US. How you think that structure still remains, or there are some volatile change in the present situation?
To your point, I actually think I think Tennessee. I can't remember the state. I think it was Tennessee where the Republicans were thinking about trying to redistrict and redraw the maps, and they didn't because there was a big faction of the Tennessee Republicans who said, "Yeah, we're not going to do this. I mean, we're not comfortable with what Texas is doing. We're not comfortable with what California is doing. So even though we're under the Republican Party who would favor something like this, on a matter of principle, we're not going to do it." I struggle with that question as to whether the checks and the balances work, right? I don't know. I can't answer it for you right now. It depends on the day.
Okay,
And there are some
that makes
days where
sense.
I'm like, it doesn't work anymore. We're here, there's an autocracy on the doorstep. But then you see signs of it that, yeah, maybe it does work. So it remains to be seen, I think, whether the checks and balances and the ambition versus ambition system will prevail.
So
So
I'm
that
glad-
leads to okay.
Go ahead,
You
go
go
ahead. Okay,
You go
Casey,
ahead.
can you remember that time I was studying in the Bush School with you? At the same time, while we were in the class, I found some of the students who were pronouncing the word socialism or the left kind of political ideology. So while they were uttering this word, they were kind of like shouted, or they were expressing that they are pronouncing some bad words at the time, just before 6-7 years back. So someone talking about socialism is kind of like taboo at the time in the Texas, while we were student in the same school. But recently you saw someone from the quite a bit of left heavy ideology, socialist democrat, is getting into the top city of the US as the top leader, as a city mayor. And I found some of the council, the mayoral council, the junior post in the constituencies are from seriously left-leaning politics. So how do you evaluate this shift from the total capitalistic ideology to the totally socialistic communist idea? So why do you think that people got chosen subscribe those kind of ideology within just few years? What's your evaluation and take?
Yeah, so a couple things. Maybe to just frame the context for listeners. So the Bush School is located in Texas, pretty rural part of Texas. That is a very conservative stronghold, right? It's part of the quote-unquote the Bible Belt, right? There's a lot of very religious people there.
Okay.
Very conservative. We attended the Bush School, right? And who was George H.W. Bush? He was a Republican president. And what I would say, sitting in the class, listening to people, oh, communism bad, socialism bad, right? You have to understand that that's kind of how they were brought up and educated, and that's the viewpoint they formed, right? And it's kind of lazy. It's a lazy talking point, right? When you get uncomfortable with an idea, you just slap a label on it. That's socialism, bad. Communism, bad. Going to New York, right? New York's a very different state. Geographically very far away from Texas. Very big city. Very different politics, right? Very different political history. Much more liberal, right? There is never going to be a chance for a Republican to become the mayor of New York. That's not going to happen, right? So you had Andrew Cuomo, you had, what is his name, Sela or something like that. Part of the problem is I think people were pretty disaffected with Andrew Cuomo because he had a storied political career, but he had a lot of, instances of maybe corruption and maybe being a bad guy, right? So I think that maybe fueled Mamdani's win. And yes, I do think there are more socialists, more progressives in New York who are more comfortable with a more far left ideology, right? I'll give you a kind of a counterexample here. So in Wisconsin, so I attend the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Madison's a very liberal city. And in law school, it was the opposite of what you experienced, where instead of socialism bad, communism bad, it was guns are bad, right?
Yeah.
Anybody who owns a gun is evil. I own guns, right? I used to be fairly conservative. If you disagreed with certain viewpoints, depending on the case, or even if you took a moderate stance, for example, you were kind of afraid to give your viewpoint in class because you knew that there is a very strong liberal tendency in the school. So I struggled with that, right? Because again, it's the same thing. It's slapping labels, it's lazy thinking. And does it reflect broader politics? I don't think so, right? I mean, I think when it comes to elections, there's so many different types of voters who vote on so many different types of issues, right? Maybe housing is very important to me, but maybe not
Yeah.
so for you. Maybe childcare is very important to you, right? I mean, I think it's really hard to predict or to really understand what motivates people to support a certain party and not. And Wisconsin is a very good example of that, of the last election, because this really blows my mind. So we have a Democratic governor. His name is Tony Evers. He was elected during the last governor election. During that same election, there was also a race for the U.S. Senate. And I thought it was going to be a very competitive race. Ultimately, the person who won was Senator Ron Johnson, who is a very Republican senator, right? So what does this mean? It means that there is a voter out there who voted for both Governor Evers, a Democrat, and Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican. And Wisconsin has had a history of these split ticket elections, and that's very hard to understand why that happens, right? But for me, I think that reflects that there are less people out there who maybe are engaged in kind of that lazy thinking of labeling and are a little more nuanced than we give them credit for. So yeah, I mean, very interesting U.S. elections.
So to give another counterexample, in 2024 election, there was a group of people in New York who voted both for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and President Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a perfect example.
So 2% in two different, literally two different polar of two different parties, and people are voting for that. So that's really important point that voters are more sophisticated that we give them the credit for. That leads to my question. Okay, so now you're saying politicians can do that, can bring their people together or divide the people that they oppose. What is the role of technology here? Let's bring my social media example and my internet example. So since 1999, after Google came, they are collecting information about people, they know about people. So, and in last few elections in the United States, the people turnover was low. Low means on the lower side.
Mm-hmm.
So people are getting frustrated with the national election. They're getting bombarded with ads based on their demographic information. If I'm a conservative, then I hate these liberal ideas of cohabitation, lesbianism. So majority of Republican ads went to promote that idea that Democrats are all about those gender affirmation care, whereas it's only 1% of the population. Then you have this social media campaign targeting into people's social media profile that they know how to influence this person to vote in a certain way. When the person gets in a certain situation that he's being bombarded, or the person being bombarded from different sources, and they cannot decide, they don't go for vote. So first of all, we are getting impacted by the technology, apart from that gerrymandering, and also we are getting less and less attentive or less and less included with the national politics and things like that. So in this situation, I think you guys proposed a solution, which is the machinocracy, deciding the democracy with the use of machines. So I would like to take this opportunity to ask Tauhid Bhai, please give us this idea. What is machinocracy? You have written a lot about this. You have published an article on this. And I would like to first take your take, and then the person that you discuss this idea with from Casey. So Tauhid Bhai.
Yeah, I have already shared with the Casey about this article a few months back, maybe 1 or 2 months back. And we discussed about that idea. My idea came while I was reading quite a few books on the AI, artificial intelligence, and machinocracy. And since we studied political science at the public administration in the Bush School, and afterwards we are studying some kind of policy issues, economics, and those things. So I was trying to figure out what's gonna be the future of democracy throughout the world. Maybe this part of the world, there are some hazy picture, the vague ideas about democracy. We call them democracy, but in real sense, they are far away from the real democracy. Leave it behind. If you think about the Western world, the Europe and even the North America, what's the real picture of democracy? So I tried to study the voting amount of voting turnover in different kind of election in the US, even the Europe. Okay, if you think about the central government election or a big election like New York City mayoral position, where there are so much money and so much hype and also the media attention, all those stuffs, okay, there is a fair chance of around 60% voting. That's good enough, and you can be very much optimistic that there is 60% voting. Okay, that's good. Maybe some other countries, like if you think about Sweden or England or Finland, in the central election, maybe 50-55% of voting. Okay, quite good enough. But in so many countries in the world, the voting turnout is so low, maybe 20-30% in the even central election, the federal elections. If you go beyond that federal election, there are so many layers of the local governments throughout the world. Even in the city of Texas, we live there. So there is a mayor in the city of Texas. So I tried to find out what's the voting turnover there in the city mayor election. I found that the last time it was like 22% vote. Okay, that's good. Sounds good. And before that, it was like 7, 8, 10% in last election. So someone giving their opinion for a top position in the mayor election or the city leadership election, just only 7 to 10%. And people are giving the votes 10 out of like 100 people. And you are elected from the 10%, since you got like 6 votes out of the 10. And you are calling yourself a majority, and you are calling yourself that we are democratically elected. So is it the true democracy? How many people or how much percentage of people actually reflects their ideology there? I mean, is it really giving the proper ideology of the political view of the people while they are attending the poll? I found that the similar situation happens everywhere. Maybe in your country, you have quite a few numbers of elections. Even the city mayor and then county sheriff or something like that, and the state election and county judges. So many layer of elections. Even some states, there are elections for the Supreme Court judges. And same thing happens throughout the world, especially the developed world. So ultimately, what's happening right at this moment, we are thinking or we are faking a democracy. That we have a democracy, but we actually don't have border. We are pretending that we are getting serious level of democratic practice throughout the society, throughout every tire of our life, but actually we are not. Let alone this part of the world, it's beyond the calculation. But if we calculate about the proper westernized, educated, rich, developed industrial societies, I already found democracy is almost dead. So what actually can be a...
When you say democracy is actually dead, that's really pessimistic. I would not go that far. The democracy is actually dead. What you're trying to mean, if I paraphrase it, is since the population, the participation who are taking these democratic decisions is less than 50%, so that means this decision is not representative of what majority of the people thinking. So that is, yes, in a one way that we're not actually following democracy. This is something else. Right, Bhai?
Yeah. Actually, we are pretending, we're faking democracy in so many parts of the world. I found that. Casey, do you have any comment about that? Then we'll proceed on my next part.
I do. So a couple thoughts. One, there was a time where I really agreed with you that low voter turnout is a big problem, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a democracy if people aren't actually voting? But then the more I thought about it, there was a little bit of an experience this past year, which kind of gave me a little more hope, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So my thought is, maybe a no vote is a vote.
Okay.
What do I mean by that, right? There are people out there who, frankly, they don't really care about politics until they actually have to. And a no vote is a vote in a way that they're fine with the status quo. They're fine just deferring to the active voting population to decide things for them, right? And that's their position. That's their vote by not voting.
Yeah.
However, I do think democracy is alive because, especially on the local level here, we had a very interesting election in my city. So I live in a city called DeForest. It's like a suburb of Madison. And what was crazy is we had a general election back in the spring for one of our village board members, right? And by way of backstory, last year the village decided that they were going to remove fluoride from the drinking water. I'm not going to get into the merits of that conversation, right? I mean, it's a very hot button issue, upset a lot of people, but the village board said, look, we're going to remove fluoride from the drinking water.
Okay.
So they did. And we had an election, And they voted the same board members back onto the village board. And then they finalized it. They actually removed it from the drinking water after the election, right?
Yeah.
And then for a lot of people, they were like, okay, that's ridiculous. We're going to recall somebody. Like, we're so mad that we're done with the status quo. Even though they had a chance to vote these people out, they didn't. But once they did, and the fluoride was removed, there was a huge movement to recall one of the village board members. And ultimately, in September, he was recalled, right? And replaced by somebody who now wants to put fluoride back into the drinking water. But the point is of the story is, when there's the status quo and nothing's really been finalized, people don't vote, right? They don't really
Okay.
care. But then once something happens where, they're really vested, it's disrupted the status quo, there is a big political movement. It was extremely unusual and very difficult to recall somebody, especially 6 months after the election. But they did it, and as we sit here today, one of the village board members is no longer a board member. There's a new person on the board, and the power dynamics have completely switched. So going back to your question, I think a no vote is a vote.
Okay.
And I do think that democracy is alive when it hits home.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah.
So to me, that's the idea is democracy comes to the point when people need it. But I have more nuanced. I want to go a little bit more. Okay,
Okay,
now
good,
let's say, people, you have representation. You have some sort of representation that, but when this 21%, so let's say we have 50% of the people votes and 50% doesn't vote. So when this happens, let's say we can come up with alternative where we can go and find out a different solution by which we can attract more people that come and vote, or we come up with some other solution. Do you guys propose any solution like using AI or things like that to increase this participation, to bring more people into this voting process and things like that?
If the question is to me, then I have like quite a few other ideas. I'm okay with the idea given by Casey. I actually subscribe his idea that still now it's not dead. It's the necessary. When people need to speak out, they will speak out. We are expecting that one. Until there is no necessary or no hurry to speak out, no urge to speak out from the inside, then they may not speak, and remaining the status quo completely. Okay, I subscribe the idea. But my proposition is that the idea of the democracy is dead, not today, maybe in a dying process, in the dying bed, maybe after 60 years, 40 years, 50 years, or at the end of this century, there will be, according to my proposition, that there will be minimum level of democracy anyway. Okay, think about the present level of democracy. Is the democracy is properly functional right at this moment? Why I'm arising this question? Look at different political parties throughout the world. So what actually they are doing? Most of them agitating people in terms of immigration laws. Who is coming into the country and who will get out of the country? Who will bar to come into the country? There's a serious major political agenda throughout the world, especially in the developed world, while they have a federal election. Even a country like Japan is thinking about that issues. Okay, it sounds good that you are not ready to get more people from other least developed countries. That's fairly okay, I don't mind. But if you go actually by the economic theory, the theory that we study in the school, what is the contribution of the labor part of the economics, that you actually need immigrants. Maybe not today, but tomorrow you will need, if you want to thrive the economy you have already, or if you want to keep growing, because the economic theory requires certain amount of population in your system. So while you are doing campaign for election, you are preaching something quite opposite of the economic theory and quite opposite that actually required for your development or betterment of the population. But somehow, by your political rhetoric, or by managing the social media campaigning, or putting millions of dollars by your funders, you are teaching something really, anti-economic theory, anti-development, preaching to the people, and people actually subscribe sometimes those ideas. I, right at this moment, doesn't deny all the power of the people, but if it remains this level, that people are more fanatic about this kind of unnecessary issue which are not much more essential for the development of human spirit or spirituality or the economic development, rather than some kind of religious or xenophobia or some kind of social instigating issues. Then there comes the issues of the implication of the level of voters and the people who are right now voting, actually how much that are actually contributing to the society. Leave it aside. If you go in another level, that while you need some institution to run your country, so you already have an institution. So when you have a good institution, you may not require a voting system. But if you just continue this kind of political manipulation for some degrees, I mean, there will be some issues like some other countries from other part of the world. They will find that since there are not much people in the poll out and the voting time, turnover is low, and they are finding that we need a political solution or leadership solution. So who could be the better leader, Tawhid, Casey, or Shakil? So why not arranging such kind of voting or political, festival, rather than we can set up a supercomputer of 100 computers, then we can give the proper data access to the supercomputers about Tawhid Ilahi and Casey Risi and Shakil Ahmed, and he will analyze all this data and he will find out our leadership. And that leadership may be better than that actual democratic process, because you cannot say right at this moment that the process that we elect our leadership is 100% flawless. So there will be similar issues in my proposition of machinocracy, but still, if you set up some criteria that should be in the system, then it may really help to find out a better leadership. Okay, I need some your other ideas about your issues and your point of view, and also the criticize that you may have, right, Shakil or Casey.
So if I if I take your thingy, I want to piggyback on the idea that Casey shared a few moments ago, that democracy is alive when people's back is in the wall, that it hits hard in their life. So when you're saying that, okay, there are some ideas, there's some these xenophobic ideas, these anti-immigrant ideas, anti-economic ideas, these ideas actually, to me, in my opinion, came into action in last decade or last few years, because people were not getting the benefit of democracy. People are not getting benefit of having a free market. So after 2000, when the United States let China to join WTO, the world globalization started, trade started, and the free market philosophy has made the business organizations here the idea that you have to maximize your shareholders' value. For that reason, you have to ship your manufacturing to the cheap location so that you can make more goods there, sell here, make more money. As a result, what happened? Lots of industries went away. United States became more service industry than a manufacturing hub, and other countries has took this power. As a result, this United States is facing this inequality because the service industry is concentrated to this Magnificent Seven, the 7 big, large technological company, and the rest of the economy is gone. For example, for the rise of Amazon, you would see all these mid-level shopkeepers have lost their business because they don't have anywhere to sell because people are buying online. So when this is happening, when the economy is going to a service, this lower middle class, this white conservative, they think that they should be given more money, more power, but they're losing more money, more power to these immigrant employees in this Magnificent Seven technological companies. So when they're facing that, let's say started facing in early 2000, 2007 at crisis, then it is coming down, then people ideas, these populist leaders, they come with these ideas, xenophobic ideas, which really rings with the economic suffering that the other class is facing, and then they start becoming active and going towards this anti-democratic. What is the next step? So that's where I would differ with Tawhid's ideas. Tawhid bhai is saying, okay, day by day it will go even more, but in my opinion, what I am saying here, seeing this recent election, when the normal people will face the burden of these xenophobic policies, of these non-economic policies, because these policies cannot be successful. These tariff policies, to me, I am a master's in economics, but I do not see in any way this kind of policies bringing any benefit for the United States. So when these will attack the normal people, when the normal people will feel, okay, this is actually causing my grocery prices to go higher. This is causing my security to go higher, go lower. This is causing my development growth lower. Then they will also again start coming towards this free market idealism. So that's when again this democracy, this voting would become essential again in people's lives.
Okay.
So that's what my point of view would be from this perspective. Anything from you, Casey?
Yeah, so just to kind of summarize it to make sure I understand, I think machinocracy is this idea of harnessing people's data and information, right? And am I correct, Toeed, that it applies to the non-voters, right? Or does it apply to everybody, right? It's a system that, based on the data the supercomputer knows about you, it elects in a leader who thinks that is going to be best for society.
Yeah.
Or does it just apply to the non-voters, right? Do you still have the ability to go and say, I have my thoughts and opinions, and I'm my human being self, and I want to vote in Toeed, right? You know, Casey be damned. I know the supercomputer wants Casey. Can you explain that dynamic a little bit more in terms of your concept?
No, okay, you're very close to my idea. It's maybe not the ideal situation, but it will be a very strong alternative in terms of where there is a very poor turnout of voters. While people are not actually going to the polling station, so there will be some small cities or small countries who find that if we have a system that will automatically elect some top leadership for their position in the central government or the local government, they'll find it like, okay, it's more interesting that we don't have to arrange a voting system and people are not interested, so we run on that. So if they have a proper software or proper like instruction in the software, then they will get a better candidate. Already Shakil was showing me someone in the country around the former Soviet Union area, Albania. So they are right at this moment. A few months back, they appointed an AI minister. That someone AI, they are in charge of a ministry. So I don't know what is their performance right at this moment, maybe good or bad. But look, I was just thinking about these issues 1 year back, but within that 8 months, we are getting our hands.
Mm-hmm.
I am saying that there are a lot of cons even about the proposition I'm saying. I'm not actually proposition to establish it. I'm just predicting it. I'm just seeing the future that for some reason that I reckon there will be a doomsday for the democratic process that we are practicing now. Just because that we don't like it or whether it's not essential or not, that's not a big factor. But factor is that there are some other points that will be more important for the system or the voting system or even the state system. So the state will decide that we will choose our leadership in that manner. Look, democracy is not like 1,000 years old institution. If you see properly, it's only 100 years, or if you extend very logically, it may be the institution of 150 years. 150 years. So it's not the eternity, the story of eternity, or it will not be the story of eternity. I was just having a casual discussion about the future of democracy. Maybe it might have another turning point, or maybe it may even go to even a completely different route. But I was just proposing this kind of future. So my perspective is that I'm not a strong supporter of the system that I'm talking about. I'm actually predicting the future. I'm predicting the future in a sense that there will be democracy. Like we have a monarchy right at this moment. We call that constitutional monarchy. But actually we are having a functional democracy. Maybe 50 years later or like 100 years later, there will be constitutional democracy, but functional machinocracy. Whether you want it or not want it. There will be some political elected leadership and there are some issues like that. But the function may be totally different. The way the AI, the machine things, the instrumentarianism and all those things are running at this moment. So my point is that I'm not a proponent, but I reckon there is a future of this kind of machinocracy in the future. Maybe not within next 20 years, maybe 60 years later. But that's not a very serious issue. We are just predicting. We are just reckoning. So we'll have some final thought about that. Then we'll enter into our next episode of discussion.
I think it's a very possible thing that in hundreds of years from now we have a AI government, right? And the system that you propose. I think there's going to be a lot of steps to get there, a lot of pushback, right? I mean, I think even in our own workplaces, right? You have people even thinking about AI, and it makes them, shake in their boots. They get a little nervous about the concept. And I think, especially in America, people really value this idea of voting and democracy. And I don't know
Yeah.
how we get from here to a system like that. I mean, those are all questions that remain to be seen. But I do think it's a concept to be thinking about. My last point is, I mean, it's very real. I went to a conference in San Francisco 2 weeks ago about the law and AI. And the American Arbitration Association, as of this week, they're rolling out an AI arbitrator, right? Or in layman's terms, an AI judge. So if two parties agree to it, I mean, right now it's a very narrow type of dispute. It's contract construction disputes. But if two parties agree to use it, as of, I think, this month, you can submit yourself to an AI judge to resolve a certain type of dispute. So to your point, I think it's coming. Nobody can predict the future, but it's certainly a topic to be thinking about.
Just to give you some context, that Albania's AI minister, so AI system, so that is actually related to what you're saying, this digital arbitration. So when Tauhid Bhai is saying that the people would want a system that would act on their behalf to select political parties in the national elections. So that's what Tauhid Bhai is asking in his proposition. So you gave this digital arbitration, Tauhid Bhai mentioned this AI minister. So if I give you a little bit background on this AI minister, so this AI minister name is Dayla, and she is literally not a human or anything. So she is actually given the responsibility of public procurement tenders. So that means this is a minister who should approve economic project. In Bangladesh, that would be ECNEC, which is the Prime Minister Cabinet who approves
veto
or approves these proposals. So to me, that's the best way we can use AI. There are things that we can do in terms of making decisions better and biased. To me, in my opinion, every corruption comes from the fact that we are giving government contracts to somebody who doesn't deserve it. Or in terms of a verdict in a law that the judge is biased and giving a verdict to person. Because the other day there is a case happened in the United States that the judge has given a rapist only because he was underage, like 18 or something, given this he, instead of giving any jail time, he was treated as a young boy, and he was given only community services. So that judge was biased, that was proven. So these sort of cases, when a system which is deciding on critical aspects, approving economic projects, deciding on a case where the logics are absolutely clear, and cases where you can mathematically or meaningfully measure the outcome of any impact, I think AI would be way better than humans. So to me, if you ask me about the future, that how this machinocracy or this would go in the future, I think it will be a side-by-side system. In the future, we will be understanding more the power of AI. People still don't understand how AI is working. Literally, the AI scientists, they have a overall idea, but how this randomness is coming from this AI, it's based on this GPU and this AI machine LLM. So when we will know more, there will be sectors in our day-to-day life, in our political life, in our economic life, that would be decided by this AI system, which would be perfect, which would understand the basic necessity, which would be given a limited criteria, limited power of taking decisions. And there will be sectors like in voting, in terms of national interest, in terms of national security, that will be judged by emotions of people. When if people will be unpredictable. To me, I'm really hoping that in Texas, those 5 new districts that Greg Abbott might come through gerrymandering, or in California, the districts that Governor Newsom might come up with, this new congressional Republican congressional districts. I really hope that they lose in one of those seats. Like Greg Abbott loses one of those seats even after gerrymandering, and Gavin Newsom loses one of their seats even after gerrymandering. I'm really hoping for that, so that this idea that political decisions or any coup from the above, people call it will be prevented by the people. At the end of the day, if we cannot ensure the power, real power from the normal people, United States will turn into an extractive society that we have learned in our previous book. This inclusivity of people, that people could take decisions in national elections, to me, it is really necessary. And I really hope people in the United States shows these in the next election after the gerrymandering districts. So with that would be a good ending of our discussion on machinocracy. So now we're going to move on to our next discussion, which is on the book. So for that, I'm going to stop this session and we're going to move on. We're not leave, we're just going to start a new session. So thank you all. We will be seeing you in the next episode.
Thank you.